Welcome back, everyone. My name is Chas, and welcome to Vardeez. And today we have a guest whose name is Freddy, and he has achieved first quartile in FRM Part 1 in all the four subjects. And not only that, in Part 2, he has achieved first quartile in all the six subjects for FRM Part 2. So that is such a rare achievement. Okay, so we're going to be catching up with him. We're going to be understanding his preparation strategies, his mock scores, and a lot of other things in between. So let's go ahead and welcome Freddy. So, Freddy, first of all, many congratulations. You just got your part two results. So, such a rare feat. Many congratulations for the same.
Thank you, sir. Thank you for the wishes. Thank you for me having me here. Thanks a lot.
It's
And
a
as
pleasure.
always, it's a pleasure to have a conversation with you, sir.
Thank you. Freddy, just to begin with, could you just share a little background about yourself, your work, or something like that?
So basically, I'm a mechanical engineer. So after that, I joined a bank. I've been working with the bank for around more than 5 years now.
Okay.
Okay, so how I came into the risk domain is that initially we are having I work in a scheduled private bank in India, so we are having sort of exams related to finance. So that's how I came into the finance. Other than that, I'm a total stranger to the field. From that, it made me curious, especially this finance markets, all those things. So just when I inquired about this a bit, I came to know about this FRM exam. So I plan to give it. Initially, it was for acquiring knowledge, but now it's something more than that.
Absolutely, absolutely. And the results totally proves that you are made for risk now. That's what the results actually suggest. So I think that's
Thank
a
you, sir.
great thing. Yes, absolutely. Okay, so when you saw your part two results very recently, I think just a few days ago the results were announced. So what was your initial reaction when you saw the result and that too first quartile in each of the six subjects that we have?
Oh, yes, sir. Actually, I was very happy and I was a bit surprised because, like us, or everybody, they might expect them to do bad in a credit or market or the first three books. Like I was okay with it, but somewhere I had messed up with liquidity risk. So, and current issues also, it's a tough subject. Like even though the weightage is only 10%, it's quite tough to get first quartile in that. So these three factors, it surprised me a lot.
Right. I mean, because a lot of theory is there. If I talk about operational risk, there's a lot of subjectiveness, and I feel that no one can be sure about getting first quartile, but you landed up first in current issues, pure theory, and everything. So I think that's also a very great thing about the results. Yeah.
For current issues, actually, I referred only your YouTube videos, which are available in the YouTube. Then I went to the Swisser. That's it. Nothing
Right.
more than that.
Okay. So when you prepared, did you initially targeted first quartile in each of the subjects for either part one or part two?
No, like initially when I was appearing for part one, I had no idea. This is the first time I'm facing such an exam, so I had no idea how the exam might be. Other than the mock, we don't have any like a question bank or test series of that level, and the
Right.
grading criteria. So I was absolutely not sure about my part one results. Like I just wanted to pass the exam. That was it. But part two, part one's experience. So I had some idea, but still I was not sure.
All right. Okay. Makes sense. Now, many students they want to know like what was your strategy for getting first quartile in part one. So first we'll talk about that, and then we'll move to the strategy of yourself for getting first quartiles in part two. So let's begin with part one first.
Okay, part one, as we know, we are having four subjects. But initially, before even starting any books, like since I was from an entirely different background, I had to build some basics, like time value of money, then basics of financial market. For time value of money, I guess I used YouTube videos available. Then for basics in financial markets, I guess I used Seroda Varsity. It's a great tool. So once my foundation was correct, then later I moved to book two.
Okay.
Okay, even though I was from an engineering background, like I was not much familiar with statistics and stuff. So like where that was done, and for book three and book four, I referred GAR. So usually people they refer Schweitzer text, but initially I think I started with Schweitzer text.
So so just to put one more question, and is it that you referred GARP for part one, or what study material you actually use for part one?
For part one, like as I said, for the second book, I referred a few chapters from the GARP text. And for book three and book four, that is valuations and risk models and financial markets and product, I entirely use GARP.
Okay, perfect.
Uh,
Because a lot of people, they actually do not refer to GAR, but what I feel is that if you refer, let's say, book number three, four, or maybe book number one, GARP has fantastic material, right? And there's nothing above GARP. So
Absolutely, sir. And the way the concepts were explained, were superb.
absolutely
They have examples and the explanations are crystal clear. But many people they don't even know that GAR book exists.
correct. That's exactly what I do in my class for part one as well. Just to create my own slides for part one, I use Schweizer as well. But then whatever information that is missing in Schweizer, I pick it up from GARP and I just put it out there. So I think having the exposure to GARP is simply amazing.
And the GARP people they have a habit of asking things which are in GARP but it's not present in Shweta. And for book four, I guess the volatility chapter, the VAR chapter, I think VAR is the most important foundation for part two. While learning, I didn't think that much, but it was very interesting, the GARP book. So I think I read Swayzer. I could answer the questions, but I didn't get much conceptual clarity. But once I referred GARP, it was clear.
Right. So that's something that you use for part one. Yeah, the material, if I have to talk about the Schweizer initially, and then you move to GARP and you stuck to it. And I do remember that you used to ask me doubts and you used to send me those GARP text. And then we used to discuss about the concepts. So like modeling non-parallel term structure chapter,
Yes,
I still
exactly.
remember.
I forgot that name.
I remember that because you were the only one who used to ask me questions directly from the GARP text. So that's very good thing. So talking about part two, what material did you stick to for part two? Schweizer, GARP.
So just before preparing my starting preparation, I asked you which material to use, and you had clearly said go for Schweizer, and but for important topics you need to refer GAR. But
Right.
you, as you correctly said, part two is a totally different game. We are having 103 chapters, and that too 80 questions. So, as you yourself said, we can't expect one question from each chapter. So, for part two, I would say selective studying, but smart studying is more needed. So,
Right. Talking about the study material now, I would like to ask you about the mock exams. Okay, as far as I remember, when I spoke to you for level one, right? I asked you that what was your mock score in part one, and you said somewhere about 70. I'm talking about the official GARP mocks, and you said
yes.
somewhere about 70, and in the second mock, you scored somewhere about 80 marks,
I
right?
guess so. In the first one, I guess I scored around 78, and the second mock, I think it was around 82 or 83.
Exceptional. So that, and I think at that point itself, I told you that okay, you will
Yes,
certainly get
yes.
one, and take it from me.
I
And
do remember that, sir.
right. So how important is it that one need to practice mock exams?
The thing is that I see people they searching for study materials, but
Mhm.
as far as I have understood, we don't have any study material the way the exam is drafted.
Right.
Okay, GARP they ask on a whole different level, but the we are having many question banks available, but I don't think any of that matches how GARP asks or draft the questions. So
Mhm.
mock exams was really important, especially the official mocks provided by GARP, and I would
Got it.
suggest everybody to at least give it twice.
Perfect.
And I've seen some people they just take it casually. It isn't something that we should take casually. So it should be taken with proper seriousness.
Right. Part one is new. You need to understand the context, the language, and everything.
That's one point. Language like
Right.
GARP, they're very good at tricking us.
Absolutely. That's correct. So, what was any challenge that you had in part one of the FRM?
As I said, I lack the foundations. So initially, building from the scratch, it is very difficult, especially the basic finance concepts. That was one thing. And when I attempted the mocks, I found that the way the questions are asked, I guess for the exam, around 75 to 80% will be theory only, but those will be very conceptual. They
Correct.
were the like plug and play questions will be very less.
Right. So yeah, I think GARP has moved to that particular pattern as well. Lot testing more concepts. Like even if you do not solve thousands of questions, if you have conceptual clarity, I think you can still make or pass the exam.
Yes. Exactly for part two also.
Right. That's true. Now let's talk a little bit specifics about part two. So once you cleared your part one exam, uh, I think you cleared in May last year, right? May 2024.
Yes.
And you directly appeared for November for part two, November 2024 for part two, right?
Yes, sir.
Okay, so did you start the part two prep like just 4 months after getting the results, or immediately when you gave the exam of part one, you started part two prep?
Oh no, actually, just 1 week after the exams, I ordered Schweizer text, as you said. But I guess I started studying only after the results were out. I think the
Okay.
results it was out around July first week. Then that month I had some family function, so I was busy with that. I actually started my preparation by August second week.
Okay. So that's August, September, October, and November. So how did you do your preparation in 3 months, and how many hours did you study each day for part two?
Like I'm a working professional, so I leave before my job at 9 and I come back at around 6:37.
Hmm.
So it was a challenge for me. But still, compared to part one, once if our foundations are correct and we are building from scratch, we are having something, so we are building on top of that. So
Right.
that was for part two. But initial, like, let's say, I started with investment risk.
Mm-hmm.
And you might remember I asked you certain doubts regarding alpha, those things. So
Right.
I initially I had a starting. So I was I was finding very difficult to connect to the subjects, especially the chapter names and the content in the chapter.
Correct.
So for a few chapters, initially I had to refer GARP to get the
Mhm.
conceptual clarity, especially for the alpha chapter. So
Right.
you might remember I had asked you several doubts
Yes, absolutely. I do remember her that. Yes.
just from that chapter. So I was kind of stuck from there. Then I guess you itself suggested me to start with market risk. Then I
Mm-hmm.
got into the flow. Market risk initial few chapters, a direct continuation of part one. So once we get to the momentum, it will be easy for us. So since I was working, I tried to wake up early most of the mornings. Some days I could, some days I couldn't. Then afternoon also, after work, I tried to study for at least 2 hours.
Okay. So I think that's that consistency. So approximately 3 hours a day is something that you've studied for like 3 to 4 months, right? And that
Yes, sir.
for part two. Fair enough. Fair enough.
Absolutely.
Effectively, what's the crash course in your preparation?
So as you know, like initially I read through Spacer and let me say subject wise. So
Mm-hmm.
for market risk, a few chapters I referred GAR, especially that FRTB chapter.
Right.
It's very important and it's a favorite chapter for GAR. So for that chapter, I referred GAR text. Then
Mm-hmm.
coming to market risk, there were few chapters like the art of term structure models and that
Mm-hmm.
series of chapters I was
Right.
finding it very difficult. So that's when I reached up to you and I enrolled with the crash course. And I remember in that crash course, the whole 4 chapters, it was consolidated into 3 hours, I guess. But it was excellent. So, like, I tried reading twice or thrice, but I couldn't get the whole of those. Especially the
Mm-hmm.
chapter name and the chapter content, I couldn't relate that. But that
Right.
3 hour video, it made everything well, sir. And for operational risk, you told me to give importance for the last basic chapters and not to give much emphasis on the first 7 or 8 chapters. So for that 7 or 8 chapters, I just read through your crash course notes. I didn't even read Swisher.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Okay, then we are having another 8 chapters which are case studies. It will go fast. It's easy and it's interesting.
Right.
Then the basic chapters I referred, Rarok also I referred car.
Got it. Mm-hmm.
But as you said, operational risk, it's kind of choosing the best practice. We won't be humanly able to remember everything.
Absolutely
It's
true.
absolutely, it's a very big text and we won't be able to remember any of those. So I never tried to learn anything by heart. Whatever I felt right, I checked it. That was it, because my time frame was very low, and I won't be able to complete. We won't be able to by heart exam. So I just read through crash notes for the first 8 chapters, and as I said, I prepared for the rest chapters. Then whatever I felt right, I used to take it. And since I was working operational risk, I can't we kind of have that in our work. It was easy, but I have found students, especially those in the undergraduates preparing, they found operational risk to be difficult.
Correct, correct. So, how did you handle the credit risk? A lot of candidates, they fear credit risk and they are not able to manage that. So, what is one tip that you would give, especially for credit risk?
For credit risk, I would say capital structure in banks. That chapter is important, and there are many parts of that chapter which not present in space. So, and if I remember, Garp loved to ask from that part. So for that chapter, I referred Garp. I think you might remember I had doubts with this CVAR section. You
Correct,
solved it. I again had doubts. I used to
right.
ask that doubt repeatedly. I think the day before my exam also I asked the same doubt to you. And for this
Yeah,
credit risk, after the halfway through the book, there are many repetitions. We can see the same concepts coming up and again. So once after the first reading, when you're doing the second reading, you will be kind of familiar with the subject.
right. Okay.
And to my
Continue.
surprise, numericals were asked a lot.
Okay, yeah. So a lot of people had this conception that okay, it's gonna be theory like that. They have this
Yes.
preconceived things. See, that's what the point is. I always say that do not make any assumptions about the pattern of the exam. You learn everything, you focus everywhere, and then whatever that shows up, that's gonna be that. Because some students may get more of calculations, some may get less, right? So we cannot be sure of what we will see on the exam.
Especially from credit risk, I guess there were many numericals.
Right, right, right. So continuing with that, how many days did you have for revision and the mock exams and everything?
So initially, I was planning to finish my one round reading in August before October. Okay, but
Okay.
I couldn't do that as everything won't go as per our plan. So initially,
Right.
I focused on finishing the syllabus. So I didn't do any questions during my first reading. Then I started with the second reading, and my plan was to finish by October half and do go with the revision and mocks. But I think if I remember correctly, I could finish only by November beginning. Okay.
Okay.
Also, the questions I did only along with my second reading. After I completed each subject, sectional mocks were available in your portal, subject wise.
Right, right.
Okay, as I already told you, like I faced issue with having a good material for practice. So that sectional mocks, it was awesome. So like, I think I referred a few other fellow students also, and they were also having a great opinion about the sectional mocks and the mocks available in your portal.
Right, right. So you just almost had 15 days for the mocks and everything. That's the only time that you
Yes,
had.
yes, yes.
Okay. So did you apply for any leaves for the exam?
Uh, for part one, the day before the exam also I went to work. For part two also it was it was like that. The day before the exam also till 6 7 I was working. But for part two I had to take a mandatory leave for around 2 weeks. I think that
Okay.
was in October last week, I guess. So that's
Okay.
when I could get some time to cover the topics.
Okay, okay. Now I get this question a lot of times. Okay, there are many bankers who do not find time for studies and they are not able to devote time to the prep. So, you being a banker yourself, okay, how did you find or manage to get time for the studies?
To be frank, it was quite difficult, especially because if our work is hectic, we won't be able to. Somehow we'll come back home and we'll sleep. Nothing else will happen. But the thing I opted for November is that if we have a shorter time frame, we'll put in more efforts.
Mhm.
If I was planning for next May, I'll have almost around 1 year, but I won't put in sufficient efforts. So that's why I chose a shorter time frame. And
Okay.
so we'll have to put in more efforts, sir. Either we'll have to wake up early or we'll have to sit at night. And
Right,
we
right.
should use the weekends usually because that's the only time we'll get. And we'll have to
Absolutely.
sacrifice a lot family time, functions,
Mhm. Correct.
trips.
Right, right. And I think that that also makes sense, right? And that's why some people they have that momentum going. They pick the next available attempt and they don't want to, stretch a little and keep the hard work going for about 8 months or 10 months and so on and so forth.
Yes,
Some
I
people
didn't
need
want to
get a
stretch it
score.
that much.
Right.
And I just want to add one more point regarding mocks.
Okay, yeah, please.
Mocks are like they're superb important for the both part one and part two. So for
Mm-hmm.
part one, I took only GARP mocks, but for part
Mm-hmm.
two, I think I started with GARP previous year's mocks, but I guess all those are same.
Correct.
Then that's when I started giving mocks in your portal. I
Mm-hmm.
guess there are around 6 or 7 MOOCs, and all the questions I might have already told you they were well crafted, especially the way Garth might ask the questions. So,
Right.
like, I enjoy taking those MOOCs.
Absolutely.
Seriously.
Thank you. Thank you so much. So, yes, I had a mix of everything, one difficult, one little bit not so difficult,
Yes,
one on
yes,
the
yes, yes.
intermediate level, like that. So, I structured it like that. And also,
And
what was your average score in part two mocks?
part two, GARP mock, I guess I scored 58 and 62 official mocks. And in your mocks, I was scoring around 55 to 65. That range I was scoring. So.
Okay, so somewhere about 55. So it gives a reflection that, okay, if you score above 50 and 55, so that's always I tell my students as well that if you score above 55, you have a decent chance of passing the exam. If you're scoring
Yes.
less than 50, then you need to put up some more work. So
Once we are through the mocks, we'll get an idea where we are lacking. Because after each mocks, I think I used to contact you with like I scored this much, but in this section I didn't do well. So you used to
mm,
give me those voice notes, 2 3 minutes. Like I always say, I love that a lot.
correct. So yeah, so that also keeps me, in the loop that what you are doing and what the students are doing. So I think that's a great way to actually stay interactive and connected with the prep. So what would be your advice, or what would you recommend to someone who wants to get first quartile in part one and in part two? What would be your suggestion?
Always give importance to mocks. Give it with proper seriousness, like
Hmm.
you're giving in the original exam. Then for important chapters, always refer GAR. And if you're having sufficient time, I will say refer GAR for any subject.
Okay. Hmm. Right.
Especially like book 3 and 4 in part one. That is the foundation. The
Right.
whole level two is built upon that. So that's the main thing. And revision. Revision is very important.
Correct. Correct. Absolutely. You cannot just neglect the revision aspect of the exams. Perfect. Perfect.
So there are some LOIs which won't be numericals. So GARP
Hmm.
specifically says that. So numericals won't be asked from that. So you need not practice numericals from that part.
Right.
And
That's
the
focusing.
book two in part one, even though it might seem to be numerical, most of the questions will be conceptual only. And
Correct. And
that's
that's
that's where most of the students they find challenging in part one.
right. 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 So some people, they try to understand the derivation of the formula as well, and that is not required. We don't have to become a
Yes,
statistician.
yes,
Right.
absolutely.
So focusing on the learning objectives is very, very crucial, right? Okay. All right. So that's it. Thank you so much, Freddy, for taking your time out and joining in this particular session.
Thank you, sir. Thank you for having me, sir.
All right. So, and to all the candidates out there who are preparing either for part one or part two, remember, with the right strategy, with the right mindset, you can also achieve first quartile in the subjects. Okay. So, with that being said, I'll see you in the next video. And thank you so much for watching this particular episode. Thank you.